After a hot start to the New York Jets preseason against the Packers, a bit more of a negative preseason showing last night against the New York Giants. NFL analyst Emory Hunt is here with me to break it all down. I'm fired up even after a loss. Let's get into it.
Bring that here, all right? Go up there and press him and choke him out.
What's going on, Jets fans? It's your boy DT back. Saturday night against the New York Giants did not go how the New York Jets expected. We have somebody who was in person eyewitness accounts of both joint practices for the Jets and Giants. He's going to give us all his takeaways from the week, including some of the instant takeaways from last night's game. He works for CBS. He also does color commentary for college football. He is NFL analyst Emory Hunt of Football Gameplan. Emory, thank you so much for joining us on this Sunday morning.
Appreciate you for having me, Dylan. Always a pleasure.
Absolutely. So you and I have talked a couple times in live form settings with Glenn Naughton from Jet Nation when I was doing work over there. So very happy to have you on the channel. You and I also had the chance to meet at Senior Bowl down in Mobile last year. So really happy to chop it up with you. Obviously, it's not the best timing coming off a huge loss for the Jets like this last night. It didn't look great, especially when the first preseason game had so many positive takeaways. This one, not as many positive takeaways, but we're still going to find some silver linings within that performance last night. But I want to start first and foremost with the joint practices. Were there things that you saw on Tuesday in Florham Park or Wednesday in East Rutherford between the Jets and the Giants that maybe didn't translate to the game? Maybe the coaching staffs are still holding in some secrets about what their teams are actually going to be in the regular season. So maybe we can, relieve some of the panic and the stress that the Jets fans have about Justin Fields in this offense. Are there some schematic differences that you saw them do differently in practice versus the game last night?
Not schematic. It's just that people have to understand, the amount of work these guys get during those joint practices is a lot. So the Justin Fields I saw at Florham Park, when he started 11-on-11 was outstanding. All the quarterbacks, honestly, were really good in terms of how they were able to complete some tough throws, make some touch throws, throw in some tight windows, move the offense down the field. And then the Giants kind of got up to speed and made things tougher on the back end of practice outside of the red zone period where all three quarterbacks had some success in finding the end zone. Then you go to MetLife or Quest Diagnostics at the Giants facility. And that day I didn't see the offense because I watched the Giants defense. The Giants offense because at the Jets facility, I watched the Jets offense. So I want to see what the Jets defense looked like against the Giants offense the following day. So what people also have to get, it doesn't take long, this is why the games look how they look, regular season games, because you're only getting that one snapshot of each other in a back-to-back practice situation. And this shows you how instantly things can change for an NFL team. Hey, I just saw this dude yesterday. I already got a book on him. And so things can change quickly. And that's what people have to realize of how, adapt these guys are and how quickly you become used to someone's tendencies and figure a way to combat what they did the day before. And that's the level of pros that you see on both sides, whether it's the Giants and also the Jets. So, and then, carrying over to the game, because of they got so much work the Jets did offensively, I feel like in those practices, they probably scaled back a little bit. So I'm not concerned about them or what people perceive to be from Justin Fields and the offense. We saw him walk right down the field in Green Bay. Giants defense poses different, this is 3 times now they've seen this Jets offense. And so the Jets probably know that and took away, hey, we're just going to keep this preseason playbook what it is, because we know Justin Fields has a chemistry with Garrett Wilson. We know Justin Fields also brings a dynamic to the game that is not really advantageous to show in the preseason. Showed a little bit against the Packers, but is why go out there and just try to open up the game when you already had a toe issue coming into someone stepped on. He's fine, he's playing, but I can understand the scaling back of the offense, but fans are going to overreact because that's what happens. Even though they constantly tell themselves preseason doesn't matter until they see a score and it's like, oh, preseason means everything. So I would say it's no real big issue for me for the Jets offense. I like what I saw from them at both practice. Well, obviously both practices, offense and defense. I think I came away really impressed with Arian Smith, catching the football, contested catches, and showing the confidence in realizing he had to work on a certain area of his game.
Mhm.
All intents and purposes, based on what I've seen, both in preseason games and at practice live, he's worked on them.
Yeah, I think for me personally, just speaking on Justin Fields, I would have loved to see a third drive from them last night. The first drive was about 6 plays. They had a first down on a 4th down rush attempt, and then they had basically a 3-and-out after that, had to punt. And then the second drive, they come back 12 plays. They run the ball 10 of those 12 plays. They try to pass it on 3rd down. It's incomplete. They settle for a field goal. So, just selfishly, I would have liked to see an extra drive of Justin Fields just to see what we could get. But it didn't seem like, and to your point, the Packers defense and the Giants defense are very different, right? The Packers were giving them softer underneath coverage where he could hit the checkdowns. This Giants pass rush is a lot more formidable. They're not giving him as much time. So they wanted to probably harp in and on the quick games, RPOs, the screens that they tried. Obviously, there was a bad snap from Tippmann that threw off the timing of that. So to me, everything with Justin Fields right now looks like timing based, right? He can't get into a rhythm with the receivers and the small sample size, but to your point about the practices, I do think that they are, getting enough of what they wanted to see out of Justin Fields at practice where they don't feel like they need to do these like deep passes down the field in these game settings. So to me, I'm not fully panicked yet. I understand there's a bit of panic across the Jets fan base this morning because optically in the game, Justin Fields and the timing, the scheme, it didn't look fantastic last night, right? He was 1 for 5, 4 yards on a little slide route to Mason Taylor out of the backfield on a nice little play action boot, which they had, pretty good success on the first week against the Packers. They're trying to build off it. The backup quarterbacks, though, they did look like they had better timing of the offense. Martinez was getting to his drops. He's hitting his passes within rhythm. Brady Cook struggled a little bit more there. So I understand optically fans are kind of freaking out about Justin Fields, but the second this guy takes off with his legs, I feel like we're going to take that sigh of relief in the regular season and say, okay, this is part of it, right? The zone reads, the RPO stuff that they're not really showing us in that game last night. So I'm not totally overly concerned about Justin Fields, but I think there's a point of emphasis where, okay, him and Wilson need to start connecting on these short out routes and timing-based routes, that hitch route that could have been DPI. I would have liked to see that slant route come out a little bit faster, which led to the pass being a little bit behind Garrett on that 3rd and 2. So before we get into other rookies, like you mentioned, Arian Smith, I guess overall, going into this last preseason game and regular season, what should the Jets fans expect from a Justin Fields-led offense? Because right now, like I said, we're kind of panicked. We're a little nervous. We don't know what Justin Fields is. Do you think once we get into the regular season, we will all be more calmed down about Justin Fields in this offense?
Anytime you watched a Bears game or a Steelers game with Justin Fields, you never came away thinking that he was the problem, So what you're going to get is a guy that, and it's funny, going back to my draft report on Justin Fields and that draft class, I said the Jets should take Justin Fields at 2 overall because Zach Wilson, to me, would be best suited to go play in San Francisco. And Fields has the temperament and the mentality to play in New York.
Mm-hmm.
And going through his career, watching him in Chicago, watching him in Pittsburgh, what the Jets fans should expect is someone that's going to be even killed. The offense is going to be controlled. You won't see too much of inconsistent play in terms of we don't know what we're going to get from drive to drive. And you're going to get a guy that can lock in a crucial moment and march you down the field. He is not rattled by pressure, both physically and of the moment. that in and of itself, when you're paired with a very good defense and a great run game like they will have, is going to lead to a lot of wins and a lot of, good offensive output. People, people also, I think fantasy football has influenced the way people think about the game. Um, some positive, but mostly negative. We see this course with Jalen Hurts. People watch Jalen Hurts and think he's not a good quarterback or he's not playing winning football because they don't have the fantasy numbers. And so, but when you're watching football, you're watching winning plays. Justin Fields can give you that. I mean, and people also act as if he ran a triple option at Ohio State. We didn't know Justin Fields could run the ball until he got to the Bears, because all he did at Ohio State was just throw vertically. He's
100%.
he's an intermediate to deep ball passer. And so the Bears turned him into a guy that's a dual threat guy. We knew he's an athlete, but we didn't know he was that level fast and that level explosive. That's always in his bag. And I think people are underselling how good of an intermediate to deep passer he is. And going back to what I saw in the practices and saw, him in Chicago, people also like to ignore DJ Moore had his best season with Justin Fields, as his quarterback throwing the football. So Fields can get the number one guy the ball. And what I love about what they have in tow and what they should expect, you got two good tight ends. You have a great receiver in Wilson. Now, you hope somebody emerges as a strong number two option, whether that's Johnson, whether that's Reynolds, whether that's Arian Smith. But they do have enough to where Justin Fields can have a functional offense like he did in Pittsburgh and also like he did at times in Chicago.
Yeah, it's funny for all the people that want to try to say Justin Fields is a bad quarterback. There's so many positive things you can point to from his, stop in Chicago. Like you mentioned, DJ Moore having a career year. They added the explosive element with his legs. So I'm still, I was a Fields guy in 2021. I agreed with you there. I thought he should have been the pick at number 2. And to your point, that mental toughness, I really felt like he would have been able to deal with the media scrutiny a little bit better. We wouldn't have got the "I didn't let the defense down" type of press conference reaction like we did with Zach Wilson. And yes, I get the point of the whole fantasy thing, right? Justin Fields is not going to be a flashy fantasy quarterback, but he is going to be the quarterback that can be successful, right? I've showed a chart on this channel before where he was the 4th most efficient quarterback in terms of third and short in his career. And it was like behind Mahomes and Josh Allen and those types of quarterbacks. I think even Jalen Hurts was up in that category as well. So when you're talking about just efficiency, Justin Fields can do it. And I think he is a good leader for the team overall. Also, you have to add into the fact that I think the Jets have the best individual running back. Obviously, they have 2 in Breece and Braylon. They have probably the best singular wide receiver. I think Garrett Wilson is a little bit better than DJ Moore, and they could have the best offensive line put in front of Justin Fields 1 through 5. So all these things adding up into an offense that is still very new, but still a ton of potential for Fields to grow and become more of, an NFL style quarterback in today's league where you have to rely on your legs, right? Everybody who is at the top of the charts in terms of quarterback play, most of them have an adequate level of mobility, and Justin Fields exceeds that. So if you're able to get the mobility plus the drop back game, and like you said, intermediate to deep balls, that's his bread and butter, at least in my opinion. So if you can add in the element of the quick game and the short passing, and he's good at that stuff too, all timing based stuff, I really think Justin could still turn out to be someone who is a solid contributor or a potential short-term solution at the quarterback more so than just 1 or 2 years. Getting into the offensive line a little bit, obviously we have a rookie right tackle in Armand Membu. You mentioned it. The draft coverage you do is so immersive and so comprehensive. Your thoughts on Armand Membu joining this offensive line unit? How do you think he fared in the practice week? I know there's obviously tough competition going up against Abdul Carter, Kayvon Thibodeau, Brian Burns, even Dexter Lawrence on the interior. So I guess just go from Membu across the offensive line and what your expectations are for this, unit up front in terms of run game, pass protection, starting with Armand Membu specifically.
Well, he has ups and downs. And again, when you're facing the Giants, it was a great week for him because that's not going to be the norm that you're going to see. Although he'll see some of that in week 1. against Pittsburgh. But at the end of the day, down in, down out, not every team is built personnel wise like the Giants are. So you saw some good, you saw some bad, but that's kind of what you want to see as a rookie because it gives you an idea of where your floor could potentially be in conjunction with the rest of the offensive line. Like this is a good unit, and unit is key because you're good from start to finish, left to right, and guys that can really do it well on both ends. So that's why when you see how the Jets are able to move the football, let's go back to Green Bay. You see how they're able to move the football down the field, just kind of like at ease and got what they wanted, whether it was running the ball or with a quick game going underneath. You can have that luxury when you have offensive line play. And I like that they have some good depth behind those guys as well. So they've done a good job of filling that room, although not this GM, but just in general, you know what I'm saying, that room is not lacking of depth, guys that can play multiple positions. So I like the offensive line. I like the fact that they've invested in that offensive line. And I think Mimbu is trekking in the right direction in terms of being a guy at right tackle, because at the end of the day, those concerns were, okay, he's athletic, but can he combine that with his technique and all of those things? And he seems to be getting, because again, he's in a good situation because he's playing for the Jets. So he's going to see a lot from the defense that he goes up against every day. And then, this week was good for him because he got to see it, it's almost like he was facing top 3 pass rushers every play. And that stuff kind of helps elevate or expedite your growth. And so we'll see what happens in week 1, how going against the Jets pass rushers and going against the Giants in these joint practices have helped him prepare for what he's going to see week 1.
We're talking with Emory Hunt of Football Game Plan. Hit the like button. I appreciate it. Subscribe if you are new to the channel. We're on the road to 1K subs. You mentioned it there, Armand Membu. I mean, I think overall he's going to have a fine rookie season. You're going to have the rookie lumps, right? And you're going up against quality pass rushers in practice. So it's only going to help you in these situations. The Giants defensive line is probably the top unit in like all of football, like any position group stacked against each other. Like I think of, a couple units outside of that, like the Bengals wide receiver group is very strong, but like the Giants defensive line might be one of the strongest units in the NFL. So I don't want to use the Robert Saleh cliche of iron sharpens iron that we're kind of tired of hearing in training camp. But this is the type of stuff for Armand Membu that's really going to help him hit the ground running, and going up against McDonald and Jermaine eventually in practice is only going to help him get better. So I'm really intrigued by what we saw from Armand Membu through 2 games. He did get beat on the inside move by Thibodeau, which I thought was interesting. It was one of the first plays of the offensive sequence for the Jets, and Thibodeau comes in with an inside move. Usually they set you up with the outside pass rush first and then come inside, but that's also a product of, like you said, I saw you on Tuesday, I saw you on Wednesday at practice. I know your tendencies a little bit. If you're going to do a really wide pass set, I'm just going to sneak right inside the middle. So I do like Armand Membu learning on the fly. You mentioned another rookie, Arian Smith, and I'll bundle him in with another rookie pass catcher on this offense. Mason Taylor, he got his first action last night, only caught 1 pass for 4 yards. But what can you say as a collective about these 2 rookie skill players? Because you mentioned who's going to step up opposite Garrett as wide receiver 2. I've kind of penciled in Breece Hall as like that weapon 2 player who's going to see a lot of targets in the pass game. We haven't seen it come to fruition yet, but what can Arian Smith or Mason Taylor do, or both of them really do, to assert themselves as maybe that 2B or third pass catcher in this offense? Because we know Justin Fields likes to target tight ends, and we know Arian Smith's skill set is take the top off of the defense with his speed. So can they emerge as a potential third or even 2B option in this offense?
What I like about, I'll start with Mason Taylor. I compare this game to Mark Andrews. Same type of skill set where underneath, intermediate is where he's going to live. And he's a big target, and he's an athletic guy. Being at the joint practice, I was standing right there where he made that diving catch on the sideline, a nice bucket throw by Justin Fields. And this is his first day back from injury, and he's out there laying out for passes. Give me those guys that sacrifice for the catch 10 times out of 10. And so, I compared Mark Andrews to Jason Witten. It may not be flashy, but it's going to be consistent. And I compare Taylor to Andrews. I think he can be that for Justin Fields. We saw what Fields was able to do with Cole Kmet. Same type of guy in Mason Taylor. So I think he's going to have a fantastic rookie season. And also Jeremy Ruckert, who he's played with already at Ohio State. But what about Arian Smith, right? And I always go back to, and this is the beauty of having perspective, because I compared Arian Smith to Ted Ginn. And the reason why I did that was when you go back and look at Ted Ginn when he was drafted, people thought he was overdrafted, and people thought Arian Smith was overdrafted. So you have that layer. Then you look at what he was played with early in his career with the Dolphins and even with the Panthers. He's dropped a lot of passes, but the ones he caught were big plays. But when you zoom out a little bit, and if you look at Ted Ginn with the New Orleans Saints, he was a bona fide wide receiver 2 for them and a big play guy consistently. So it shows you can get better. Now, Arian Smith won't have to go the entire arc of the Ted Ginn to get to the point where we saw him with New Orleans. We're like, man, Ted Ginn is an integral part of this offense and a consistent player. We've seen him, shrink that, runway quickly, because what we saw last at Georgia, even last in terms of the playoff game, drops. We haven't really seen him drop the ball like that with the Jets in both practice and in preseason. And he's not just making those plays where he's catching the ball over his shoulder where he can kind of get underneath it and cradle it. He's making contested catches. And he had a great one in at the joint practice. It's like, man, he's going up top, playing above the rim, making these plays. I also remember seeing something like this with the Saints had when they had Devery Henderson and also Robert Meacham. Both guys were speed guys that also had inconsistent hands, but they worked on it. Arian Smith talked about the eyesight, getting that right, and he's now making catches. And when you combine that with his ability to really chew up cushion, take the top off the defense, if he's able to lift the umbrella off the coverage, that opens up the run game to be insane. And when you combine that with Garrett Wilson's ability to win short, intermediate, and deeper down the field, now you have both in conjunction. You have the deep threat in Smith, the short to intermediate guy in Wilson, your safety valve intermediate guy in Mason Taylor. The run game is going to pop because you have, tri-level options. So Smith, to me, has been the biggest revelation this camp in preseason and how he's performed because of where he was as a college player. You knew, man, if they get him the football, he's going to go. But the getting the football was the problem. And now, to me, it seems like he's kind of shortened that gap between Dolphins Ted Ginn and Saints Ted Ginn.
I love this. So Emory basically just said, for everybody listening, the Jets drafted Jason Witten and Ted Ginn with their 2 offensive skill position players. That's a high bar to set, obviously, and that's exaggeration. But I like the comparison because, like you said, it's not flashy with Taylor, but he does a lot of things right. He's going to be a security blanket for Justin Fields in those situations where he's, pockets closing in on him, and then that hook sit route right over the middle is going to be open, and Mason Taylor is just going to be sitting in that soft spot of the zone. Arian Smith, yeah, he's catching passes over the middle of the field. He had that contested Moss catch against the Giants DB on Wednesday in their practice. He did have a drop last night, so we will talk about that. But then there was that no-call DPI where it was an underthrow from Brady Cook. He turns around. He actually had 2 steps on the defender. The pass is underthrown. He cuts back, gets arm barred by the defender, and drops it. So I don't want to, count that one drop on Arian Smith, but he did have a drop over the middle. There was a drive where him and Pritchett both dropped passes and they had to punt. But I'm really excited for Arian Smith overall. They ran a dagger concept, so Arian Smith was clearing out, and then they had a backside dig come underneath with, I believe, Brandon Smith. And I can see that exact same concept running with Garrett Wilson, right? I look at this preseason and I see the backups doing concepts in this offense, and then I try to picture the starters in those roles. So Brandon Smith doing that dig route at 14 yards with Arian Smith clearing out against the too high safety look. I love seeing that because Garrett Wilson's going to get open and make those catches too. So I'm really intrigued about these 2 starters. Hopefully one of them can emerge as, that third pass catcher, like I said, for Justin Fields. And maybe it is Arian Smith And he could be one of those sneaky plays where we look down the road in 2, maybe 3 seasons and we're like, wow, what we got out of this 4th round pick that universally was hated at the time by Jets fans. Nobody wanted to see Arian Smith's name come up at pick 110 last year. Everybody wanted a defensive tackle or just a different name at wide receiver. I think it was Ty Robinson, the interior defensive lineman, who went the next pick to the Eagles, and then Jalen Royals, who went later in that round to the Kansas City Chiefs, as 2 names that everybody wanted over Arian Smith. So I'm glad Smith is doing his part. Incremental growth. He's doing the jugs machine with those like focus goggles on after practice. So I love everything that he's, focusing in on to try to increase his catch rate. I don't want to say he has bad hands, but his drop rate was high. It's not necessarily a 1-for-1 thing. And you go from 20 targets in 2023 in Georgia to 73 targets. You were like a 3rd, 4th, 5th option in your first 4 years at Georgia. So you really only had 1 year of production where he was a good part of that offense for the Bulldogs with 73 targets in 2024. So I'm really intrigued about Arian Smith. Obviously, Mason Taylor, I feel like he's just going to hit the ground running and be a solid starting contributing player from day one, kind of like Membu, right? So Arian Smith is definitely that X factor to me. Can he emerge? Flipping over to the defensive side of the ball, they did draft 2 pretty versatile defensive backs. Obviously, Malachi Moore is the star defender from Alabama who played 5 years, most of that under Nick Saban. And then you have A.Z. Thomas, more of a boundary press man corner. What can you say about these 2 versatile defensive backs and how Steve Wilks can use them in their secondary? Obviously, we know A.Z. Thomas, is injured. So I don't know if you saw him at either of the practices. He didn't play last night. But I think that opens up a world where you can run more big nickel, dime, for Steve Wilks on the back end with like 6 to 7 positive, like above average contributors at safety and corner. So what do you think of those 2 guys? And then we'll get into the 2 guys that they drafted later from Miami.
I will say about Malachi Moore, I'm surprised he fell that far. He has very good instincts, very good ball awareness, physical player, and he is one that his sight is in lockstep with what he can get to. So if he sees it, he's already heading that way. That's how he breaks up a lot of passes, how he's able to turn the ball over, plays with the right mindset, comes from a well coached program, disciplined program, and the fact that he's, a guy that can play split field, can play shallow, can play deep, someone that is not really easily fooled. So I just think that him falling made no sense to me, but the Jets got themselves a steal. A.Z. Thomas, fantastic player. Like you say, he was injured. But, when you have these big corners that got long arms, that's the one thing physically I noticed about the Jets when I went out there, for both practices and just seeing the length and physical size of these defensive backs, corner in particular. You talk about Stiggers, you talk about AZ, obviously pre-draft with him, but also the rest of the corners, man. Even Cisco is someone that was like man, that's a well put together safety. So they have the off the bus look, and it also shows you what the plan is. People don't want to deal with physicality at that position. They want to have the free releases, they want to have the layered releases, but you can't do that when guys putting paws on you. So that's the difference between how certain teams look and how certain teams are built, and we combine that with the mindset that Aaron Glenn is instilling and what they're trying to do as a team. It makes sense. So very impressed with Malachi Moore. He had a really good play in the red zone period. When I was watching Giants offense, the Wednesday practice, I believe it was. So very excited about him. I think he could be a starter next to Cisco.
Yeah, I've been kind of saying the same thing, right? Eventually, I think he's going to push Tony Adams to get starter reps. I thought we were going to see a little bit more of it last night. Didn't necessarily come to fruition, but it seems like he's always going in as that second nickel when they take Michael Carter off the field. They're kind of jumping over Isaiah Oliver, who's like a safety / nickel hybrid, at least in my opinion. And they're going right to Malachi Moore as that slot corner. And they'll still have 2 safeties on the back end, usually Oliver and usually Dean or Jordan Clark. So I like the versatility of Malachi Moore. He did have a couple tackles yesterday where he didn't use his arms. He just kind of threw his shoulder into the guy and it didn't really work effectively. But I do agree. I love the instincts of him. He sees it, he reacts, he just goes. It's not like he needs that extra second to diagnose the play. So I really think when it comes together full circle for Malachi Moore, he's going to be a starter for this team. And like you said, I think it was way too long. What, 5th round that he was drafted? I think he's probably a round and a half too late. And kind of the same thing for AZ Thomas, right? If he was picked in the top 50, I don't think anybody really would have batted an eye. He fell all the way down to 73 for the Jets. So let's get those guys. You see it in the intro of my video here. Let's press them and choke them out. That was one of my favorite draft day calls from AG to AZ Thomas. And that's exactly what they're going to do, right? They're going to do that two-handed punch at the line of scrimmage, disrupt the timing of the routes. And for all the problems we're seeing with the current timing of our offense, we get into the regular season and you got guys like Sauce, Stevens, Michael Carter, AZ Thomas, these guys who are going to stop you at the line of scrimmage. We're going to throw off the timing of opposing offenses just as badly. So I'm really intrigued about those guys. 2 guys I was less intrigued about, and then I'll get into your hot Jets take before we get you out of here. The 2 Miami front 7 defenders, Kiko Malinoa, the linebacker. He didn't play last night. I don't know if it was an injury. We didn't get any specifics from coach after the game. And then Tyler Barron, the edge rusher, also from Miami, not doing too much with the 2nd and 3rd team in terms of pass rush juice. I didn't see him make a ton of plays in the run defense. What did you see from them in that pre-draft process that said, hey, these guys are going to be, solid NFL contributors, or maybe even just special teams guys, and they end up being Chris Banjo's best friend? What are your thoughts on the 2 Miami front 7 defenders?
Barron was solid to me, coming out. I thought he was solid on both ends. And, Miami's defense was much maligned, justifiably so. They gave up 1 billion points a game. But at the end of the day, like, those 2 guys, really stood out. But Barron was someone I thought was solid. Marigold was also another one that I thought, kind of, what the Bears have in Noah Sewell, kind of in that mold. More like a downhill thumper, decent dropping back in coverage, but for the most part, it'd be a solid run defender. But again, you like that on the inside. And so, which is why I was a big fan of how the Jets drafted as a whole. It's like, I'm going down my rankings and going down where guys have hey, I could tell you right now, just to pull it up, because I had it in my bag, where I had these Jets, whatchamacallits, because it's always fascinating to track preseason ball. And just to have this, just so happen to have it handy, watching with these guys. All right, so the Jets, Marigold is my 6th inside linebacker. Malachi Moore is my number 2 free safety. Barron was my number 5 4-3 defensive end, and AZ Thomas was my number 5 boundary corner. Taylor was my number 3 inline, and tackle or my Membo. I had a deep tackle class, so he was like 15 O tackle, but like a 77.5 grade, so very high grade. So obviously I love the Jets draft, and I was like, man, they're getting good players from top to bottom. And so that, to me, at worst, when you're talking about Barron, at worst, when you talk about Marigoa, you're talking about good depth. You need that. And those guys have played at a high level program, a lot of football. So you feel comfortable if they have to step in and play a lot, the moment's not too big for them. So that's why you kind of like that they have, like, obviously you want to have the mindset everybody you pick is going to be a starter, but everybody you pick has to serve a role. And some are going to be in starter roles, some are going to be starters in waiting, and you just got to make sure you get in when you fit in. I think with Barron and Marigoa, they're trying to, develop these guys to get to where they need to be starters, as opposed to just kind of living in that middle starter and waiting role. But if that's the role, at least you can get 3 to 4 snaps of those guys a game, and they won't give up a big touchdown play. You know what I'm saying? So I do like both players, but I think they're solid players, and that's just raising the floor of this Jets team.
Yeah, I think that's a huge emphasis on this regime versus last regime is they draft a guy and it seems like they already have a plan. Like we talked about Arian Smith already. Like they had a plan for Arian. So fans don't like the pick, but if they have a plan, I'm willing to, take a step back from my personal opinion on the pick and see what their plan is for that player. You said that about Malinoa and Barron. I think, to your point, Kiko gives them an element at linebacker that they don't really have. Sherwood and Quincy are more sideline to sideline speed guys. And Malinoa, at least last week when he played, I saw him crashing through the B gap in run defense, and he was popping some guys. So like it didn't necessarily result in TFLs or run stuffs on paper for him, but he was, doing, active things in the run game. Barron, I want to see as that third rotational edge guy. Can he, when there's better interior players, win his one-on-one matchups, more active hands? I felt like he was just kind of stalemated at the point of attack, and he didn't have that counter pass rush move to get off of it. So yeah, there's definitely things where the coaching staff needs to, have a plan in place. And that's how you get your mid-rounders to play like first rounders and your first rounders to play like all pros, like we heard AG say. So I guess I'm not terribly, concerned about those last two picks. Maybe I would have went in a different direction, but if you get solid special teams contributors with a view of, okay, in 2 years, you're going to be this type of role in our front seven, I'm okay with that too for 2 6th-round picks. So maybe it's not the worst draft class in totality. I felt like on paper, as soon as the draft was over, we as a collective hated this draft class, but last year's draft class we're praising, where we had Isaiah Davis, who's a great running back, but he's a running back 3 in the 5th round. So how can we love last year's draft class and automatically hate this year's without seeing it come to fruition? And I feel like the early returns are going to prove that this draft class was better than last year's. So
even you bring up Jordan Clark too, man. And he was my first of all, Brady Cook was my number 4 QB. I was a big fan of him. And Jordan Clark was my number 10 slot corner. I love his instincts. Obviously, his dad was a fantastic player, and Ryan Clark. And you see seeds of Ryan Clark in his game. Jordan Clark cares nothing about his body in terms of how he's active in the run game. Yes. And give me those guys all day long. And so when you include the undrafted rookie draft class with the draft class, this was an A draft for me for the Jets. Even Donovan Edwards, very good running back, and so this is the type of competition, and this is kind of leading to what I feel like you're about to ask me next.
Yeah, there's a couple UDFAs, and you mentioned one, Cook, Edwards, Jordan Clark. I think it's funny, Jordan Clark wears 33, which was Jamal Adams' number, and the first thing you said was he doesn't care about his body. Jamal Adams didn't care about his body either. Maybe it's something when you put that double 3 on in the green and white, it just seems to, you just turn your brain off, you just go and you hit the closest thing to you. So I like that. Are there any other UDFAs? You mentioned obviously Cook, Edwards, Clark, maybe even Quentin Skinner or Jamal Pritchett, Peyton Page, Fatorma Mulba is another one, Jamarcus Weston from Florida. Is there another UDFA that sticks out to you specifically that could make a chance at this 53 that you saw in practice?
Well, it's tough because I'm a big Dymere Miller fan. I called a lot of his games at Monmouth. Explosive speed, like, return specialist, and then he transfers to Rutgers and becomes a good player there. He just hadn't generated a lot of buzz already at practice, but probably is destined for the practice squad or whatnot. But that was another one that was a big fan of because I called a lot of his games, seeing the potential. But this is what happens when you get to the NFL. There's a lot of different factors that go into play of who can make plays or who how far you move the depth chart, being available every practice, maximizing your opportunity. Pritchett has played a lot. I remember seeing him playing a lot out there. I like how they tap into the spring leagues. You see Brandon Smith having a really good camp. So that makes it tough. And to a man, if you ask coaches, would they rather bring all of 90 guys to the season? They would, not just for depth purposes, but they like to continue to work with a lot of these guys they've been working with all throughout the summer.
Yeah, they don't necessarily want to get rid of a guy that they feel like they can get a little bit more juice out of, right, and tap into that a little bit more. So it is unfortunate there's 16 practice squad spots, so you really have to do the gymnastics. But that would be cool if Dymere Miller was able to stick on the back end of this, because the wide receiver position isn't really that great. So outside of Garrett Wilson, there's a lot of opportunity and availability for reps. So I like your call out of Pritchett too. He got a ton of reps with the 2s last night. It feels like he firmly is above a guy like Malachi Corley on the depth chart. Malachi Corley is just such an afterthought in this offense, which is really unfortunate. The last thing I wanted to hit on with you before we get you out of here, we're at the 40-minute mark. You had a take on CBS, and it was that the Jets could be the winners of the AFC East and that they actually have a lot of the pieces that are able to take down the reigning champions in the Buffalo Bills. So can you just go a little bit deeper into that analysis and what you see specifically from this team that makes you think that they actually have what it takes to come away as the top of the leaderboard in the AFC East?
Football hasn't really changed much since Princeton and Rutgers played in 1869, the first game, right? It's still all about run game and defense. And the Jets have that. And now you have the added element of the quarterback that enhances that can play, great situational football. We've seen the Jets beat Buffalo before with less of a team. They got guys that can press on the perimeter. They got the ability to be physical in the trenches on both sides of the ball. They have a quarterback that's unflappable. And so when you look at this, you're like, man, they're not that far off from Buffalo. Buffalo has just proven it time and time again because of their consistency, their head coach. But if you like Aaron Glenn, who's cut from the same cloth as a McDermott, as Dan Campbell, as a Bill Park, if you like that style of coach, then you got to like what they are building right here in Florham Park. And I think that combined with the talent, this is a talented team. And we saw them give teams fits the back end of last season when Aaron Rodgers got healthier and got more confident. And now you improve on the offensive line. You get a little bit more depth on defense. Three-headed monster in the backfield. You add a playmaker at tight end. Like, this is a football team that has now the confidence instilled in them from their coach. And they preach toughness. And, I just jumped off a Giants podcast where we were talking about the run game and run defense. I was like, well, you can't just turn on aggressiveness, say this week we're going to be aggressive, or this week we're going to be, we're going to stop the run. Like, nah, that had to start in, with no pads on in February and workouts, or, March and April and rookie mini camps and OTAs. You have to really have the mindset of physicality and aggressiveness in terms of tackling too. That was the premise that we talked about on the other podcast. It was like, you just can't say we got to tackle better. Well, if tackling is not in your DNA, then you just can't quickly turn it on. The Jets have preached and practiced that from Jump Street. And so that's why when you see them out on the field playing like they play, and you look at the roster and look at the talent that they have, then you could sort of compare what the rest of the division looks like. I can trust Justin Fields over Drake May. I can trust Justin Fields over Tua. So now you push the quarterback up right behind, Josh Allen. The Jets' run game might have the best run game in the division. And so when you think about the talent that they have, 1, 2, and 3, Bills got a great back in Cook. And they got some good talent with Ray Davis. I'm a big fan of him too, and Frank Gore Jr. But if we're talking about Breece Hall, Braylon Allen, that's a serious one too. Better than Miami, better than, New England. And then you look at, what they have on defense. Bills and Jets defensively, you can trust. Patriots are going to be right there too, because their defense got significantly better. So there's a lot to like about the Jets. I know people keep saying like, oh, LOL Jets, or, it's the same old Jets. But if you're going to use the same old Jets under the guise of defense in their run game, then yes, it's the same old Jets, but they got better in certain areas. So this is why I was like, at that value of what, plus 1,800, why not? Especially if you're already thinking they're going to win over 7.5 games, which I think they will. Why wouldn't you think they could split with Buffalo and have enough to win that division? So that, to me, it didn't seem as hot of a take. But anytime I say something like this, whether it's on the college level or when I told people in 2021 that the Eagles were going to the playoffs with first-year starting quarterback Jalen Hurts, it sounds radical, but if you've done the work and done the film work, it doesn't sound as bad, as hot of a take as it may perceive. But, I've done this in the draft. I've done all the time. So, but when you let things play out, people will see that the Jets are literally a very good football team.
If you listen closely, you hear all the Jets fans running to their nearest sports books to sprinkle in Jets winning the division at plus 1,800. I think that's an amazing breakdown. Your point about the physicality, yeah, they're instilling that from day one. They know they're going to be a physical team. AG broke down the practice. He was mic'd up one day, and he said, we know we're going to be physical. We know we're going to be tough. It's about the details and the discipline. And Last year, we saw bubble wrap approach, not really tackling each other in practice. We got, belt to ass treatment from the San Francisco 49ers. And then in the middle of November, we're running a tackling, instructive drill or in meetings with Jeff Ulbrich. And it's like, you got to do that stuff in March and April and May when you have your rookie mini camps and things like that to instill that into your players. Because to your point, you can't just turn it on, right? You just can't turn on the physicality, the tenacity that has to be instilled and grown into your roster from day one. So I like all these pieces that you said. I will push back a little bit. I don't think Justin Fields is the second best quarterback in the division just yet, but I do think there is a path for all of these things to, if they don't come 100% true, maybe 85% of the truth, and you still get to that threshold of being the second best team in the AFC East. There's so much unknown. The Dolphins are probably a regressing roster. The Patriots are up and coming. They put a ton of free agent dollars into their trenches, and I like Mike Vrabel as a head coach, so their physicality, their tenacity is going to be on display too, right? I mean, Mike Vrabel himself is getting into fights when they skirmish at these practices. So I'm really intrigued about it. I love somebody else's positivity about the Jets in this division because it seems like it was a foregone conclusion the second they decided not to bring back Aaron Rodgers that we're going to be, bottom of the conference, really. We're going to be picking top 3, top 5 in the draft. So I love this opposite spectrum of take where the Jets could actually be a 9-10 win team, potentially fight for a playoff spot. Obviously, winning the division will guarantee you a playoff spot. So I love that analysis there. Emory, we're at the 45-minute mark. Got you a couple minutes extra. I really appreciate you tuning in. Please plug all of your work for everybody to come find you, especially your draft content once we get to that point of the season.
Footballgameplan.com/2025 draft guide. You can still pick that up right now. It's actually a great resource for the preseason. And also follow me on Twitter at FBallGamePlan. You can see me all across CBS Sports.
Did we lose you? Okay. Well, we got you back. We lost you. We lost you at CBS. What was the rest of that? I'm sorry.
CBS Sports HQ.
CBS Sports HQ.
I will also say about the draft guide, if you've purchased the draft guide every year since 2020, since I started putting out digital draft guides, right now you would have over 5,400 individual scouting reports at your disposal. The largest draft guide in existence. Every year is over 1,000 individual scouting reports. So you want to know about Damier Miller? You want to know about, where I had Isaiah Smith rated? You want to know about a lot of these players on Adrian Martinez? You want to know about him? Why I was higher on him than most coming out of Kansas State? It's all in the draft guide. And again, it's very valuable resource. And if you have that many scouting reports, that gives you a pretty good gauge on every NFL team, virtually every CFL team and UFL team. So if you are, you talk about betting, if you are looking to try to find edges on other leagues, it kind of helps you out.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. I appreciate it. I will be purchasing this year's draft guide. I will see you hopefully in Mobile in February. That'll be my 5th year at the Senior Bowl. So really looking forward to it. And I hope to have you on again on the show because that was some really great insight. And I appreciate you always, Emory. So thank you once again for joining us this morning.
Appreciate you as always, man. Thanks for having me on.
All right. We'll be in contact. Thanks, man. All right. That was Emory Hunt of Football Game Plan. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I know that Jake is also live right now at the 10 o'clock hour. So I do appreciate everybody tuning in, getting your questions in. I'm going to do a couple of comments here, and then I'm going to hop out. I told Jake I'm going to call into his show, give some takes on my thoughts of the game last night. So Jersey Jet, he said, I'm hoping Taylor looks like Cole Kmet. And yeah, we heard it right there. Emory explained that he could be, a very similar mold. He even went as far as saying he reminds him of Mark Andrews, and Mark Andrews he compared to Jason Witten. So the fact that, through osmosis, Mason Taylor is basically going to be Jason Witten, I'm excited to hear that news. So yeah, I think Cole Kmet is a good starting point, like a nice springboard for Mason Taylor's rookie year. Pat Marinello, I don't believe I've seen you chatting here before, so I appreciate you. He said, what's up, Dylan? It's Pat. How about signing Davey or Clowney? We obviously need defensive edge help immediately. I don't know who Davey is. Somebody I'll throw in is Zadarius Smith. I think him or Jadeveon Clowney would be perfect. I think one of those two guys is definitely going to sign shortly in the NFL. Like these guys, they purposely don't sign during training camp because they don't want to, participate in training camp, just to be completely blunt about it. But I do think after last night's showing with no Will McDonald, he was, out with a knee injury. They said they just wanted to protect him. That's what AG said. I do think the edge group needs a ton of work outside of Will McDonald and an injured Jermaine Johnson. So I would like, more so than a wide receiver 2. I know Rich Cimini talked about a wide receiver 2 being the reason that Justin Fields and Garrett Wilson aren't on the same page. Truly, I don't understand that take at all. A wide receiver 2 is not going to deliver the ball from Justin Fields to Garrett Wilson with better timing and accuracy. So give me a defensive end in, late stage free agency who's going to come in and give you some pass rush juice and get you off the field on third down. Daniel Meehan says, I can't give the Jets an A in this draft when they chose not to draft a DT in this draft. Yeah, again, that was kind of like the immediate knee-jerk reaction as they took guys instead of position like defensive tackle in a loaded defensive tackle class. Last week, we saw J. Tufele, Leonard Taylor to a degree. They showed up and they showed why maybe the coaching staff was right. But then last night, there was no real push. They only got 2 sacks on the Giants quarterbacks, one on Dart and one on Jameis Winston. So it was backups. And I don't love what I saw from the defensive line specifically last night. So that's fair. You don't have to give it an A. I think Emory is more so grading it based on his evaluation of the players and not so much what the Jets added to their team. Like, he liked these guys a lot. So to get a guy, like he mentioned, at Malachi Moore in the 5th round, that's a complete steal for what you would consider your free safety number 2 in the class. So I think his A grade was based more on what he thought of the draft class and where they got the players. Emory, Jets are better than Miami. Seriously? I mean, he laid out really good points as to why he thinks that the Jets, have the potential to be better than the Dolphins. If I'm just being completely, objective, I would say the Jets are trending in more of an upward trajectory where the Dolphins are probably going in a downward trajectory, right? I mean, you're one injury away from Zach Wilson having to see the field, and it's not a good place to be at the quarterback position. Obviously, Tua is still, a solid quarterback in his own right, especially in this Mike McDaniel offense. But there's a lot of reasons for concern with the Miami Dolphins, especially cornerback. I know they added Minkah Fitzpatrick back, but their cornerback position is so, they're lost at cornerback, and their offensive line's not great either. So I don't love everything out of Miami. So it's not like a terribly unfair take. We did the roster rankings on this show, and they came in within like a couple, percentage points or fractional points of each other on the entire roster ranking. So I think there's definitely a discussion to be had there. Jojo, good morning. I appreciate you tuning in. You guys in this community are truly awesome. Like I said, I know Jake is live now, and I'm trying not to overlap with him too much, but I do appreciate everybody tuning in. Jojo, thank you. And I'll see you in Tampa Bay. She said you and Jake are better together. That's funny. Jake and I, man, we've created a really good chemistry in the last couple months since meeting. So I'm really happy that Jake and I have met and done all this collaborating work this summer. The Ghost 22 says Converse had a great tackle. Yeah, JBC is another guy. I don't think he mentioned him by name, but I know in years past, talking to Emory through the Jet Nation channel with Glenn Naughton and myself, I'm pretty sure he was a higher on JBC than the collective. So I do like JBC. I thought he did better in coverage, specifically last night, than Quantez did. But Stiggers was also in with the 2s, and then JBC was more in with the 3s. Like, they gave Bump Cooper the opposite boundary corner role next to Quantez. So JBC, he's probably a little bit lower on the depth chart, but I still think he is a very solid contributor. If he's somebody you can flip at cut down day for like a late day 3 pick because you're going to cut him anyway, that's, to me, is huge. And that could go a long way in just giving yourself back end of the draft assets to then help you move up later. The Ghost again says D-line depth is our biggest problem. 100%. I was watching the game last night live with Nick Shine on his channel. For everybody who didn't tune in, definitely go give that a view. We break down everything in real time. The defensive line and the linebacker depth was one of my main concerns, one of my points of emphasis. I do want to see more from the depth, and it's not a great look, and I understand it's just a depth concern, but we know how injuries work in this NFL, excuse me. We know that we're going to see some of these backups at some point in the season. So I was definitely not enthused by the front seven depth last night. Alan says the roster's breadth of talent. The 2 Miami draftees in round 5 are non-rosterable players. This team is 2 to 3 games behind the Pats. Yeah, no, there's, like I said, there's definitely a talent deficiency in the depth areas. I think Emory did a good job of explaining, what the 2 Miami guys do well or did well in college that could translate to the NFL level. I think Maligoa would make the roster before a guy like Tyler Barron, just based on what I saw in preseason. I think, like I said, he gives you a different skill set at the second level compared to Sherwood and Quincy. So I would say Maligoa is definitely going to make the 53. Does Tyler Barron? I'm not sure. Do they cut him and end up, swapping him for a guy like Zadarius Smith or Jadeveon Clowney, and then you try to get him back on the practice squad? I'm not sure. I don't want to say they're non-rosterable players, but they're certainly back end of roster players at this current moment. And if you can get something out of them on special teams, that might be their route to the 53 or the 16-man practice squad. I don't think they're 2 or 3 games behind the Pats. I don't know if I agree with that part of it. I mean, they're both not great teams. Like, they're probably, less than 8-win teams, both the Patriots and the Jets, at least as I see it right now. But I don't think the Patriots, 2 to 3 games is a lot. So you're saying if the Jets are a 5-win team, the Patriots are a 9-win team or 8-win team? I don't see that necessarily. I would say they're closer to like 1 game apart. Stack, yeah, Stone Smart with the play of the game, which was just a nice little block and release on Abdul Carter, where he really put him on his ass, and then Chuks Okorafor coming in to finish it off was a great rep and a good welcome to the moment. Welcome to the NFL moment for Carter for sure. The Ghost, Stone Smart should be tight end too. I would say it's Andrew Beck in my opinion right now. I know they use Ruckert. They just use Ruckert in that role as the tight end too, but I think it could be Andrew Beck just as likely to win tight end 2 outright because he has the blocking prowess. And I get it. Stone Smart did have a nice block on Abdul Carter as he released, but inline blocking and being, that 6th, pseudo 6th offensive lineman, I think Beck does a better job than Smart. So I would say it's Taylor, Beck, Smart, Ruckert is the 4 in order how I see it right now. And Ruckert is struggling. If they flip him, if they cut him and pick up a waiver cut down tight end, I wouldn't be surprised. Alan says Jordan Phillips, 5th round DT who went to Miami, would be our starting defensive tackle next to Quinnen. I believe Papa Jet was the one who pointed Jordan Phillips out to me immediately during the pre-draft process as we were getting close to the draft. So I didn't get enough eyes on Jordan Phillips. I guess I'd have to, disagree only until we see what Byron Cowart is, because he's right now the starter next to Quinnen. And from every report that we saw before the ankle injury, he's been doing very well. So would Jordan Phillips be the 3rd, maybe 4th defensive tackle? Sure. That's maybe, but that's likely whoever they drafted at defensive tackle, that was going to be the expectation for that player. So do you want the expectation to be set that high already? I don't know. I'm not sure if that's a realistic expectation for a 5th round defensive tackle. Yeah, see, Alan, I don't think they're an 8 or 9 win team. I'd say the Jets and the Patriots are anywhere from like a 6 to 7 win team. And then if anything else breaks right, they can potentially win more games. But I don't think either of them are picking, lower than 50, or I guess lower than 15 in the draft. I think they're both going to be picking top 15. Edutain me. I don't know how to read that. I'm sorry. I'm illiterate. Dylan, was as good or better than any Jets show I've listened to since the game ended. Great guest. I feel a lot better now. Yeah, I do think that was very good timing. I was supposed to have Emory on the channel Thursday, and then I ended up having something come up. I had to go help somebody, and I had to push him to Sunday morning. So I'm glad that we did get a reaction from practice and the game, but I wanted somebody who was in attendance at both practices with a good, I trust Emory's eyes, right? He's one of those guys in the draft process where I gravitate towards his analysis and his breakdowns of players, because if he's going to break something down like the way he broke down the Jets winning the AFC East, it's very easy to, comprehend his analysis. And I really gravitate towards Emory. So I'm really appreciative of having him on. And I hope that in the future we have him back on, especially come draft time. You'll see Emory again, and I'll be pushing that draft guide for all of the listeners to go buy, because over 1,000 guys in a draft guide is just, it's amazing. And like he said, you can look at the preseason, even teams that aren't the Jets. Like you could look at the guys that we've played, the Packers, the Giants, and the Eagles, and you can scour through his draft guide and find all their UDFAs and roster bubble players and what his thoughts are there. So when you get into the game and a third string safety makes a good play on the Jets, it's like, oh, okay, I know about this guy because Emory wrote about him in his draft guide. So definitely a big resource come draft time for me, for sure. Yeah, I agree. Sign Clowney today. Clowney probably won't sign until like that bye week, maybe between the last preseason game and the first week of the regular season. But him or Zadarius Smith, you can get enough juice out of where it's better than Rashad Weaver, Tyler Barron, Eric Watts. Eric Watts, come on, man. He just looks lost. Braden McGregor, he's not really doing much either. So I definitely want to see an edge get signed. Alan, still going on about his Patriots. Can you just be Patriots fan 6 or whatever his name is? Just be the second coming of that. Travion Henderson will be a star in this league. Yeah, I have him in Dynasty. I'm very excited for him. He touches the ball, and he has like a 70% chance of scoring a touchdown this preseason. So, yeah, that's good. The Patriots have better depth than the Jets do. They may not have the same top-end talent, but the Pats are much deeper. Okay, so, Alan, you're basically saying that the only way the Patriots are better than the Jets is if the Jets are completely injured, right? If all our starters stay mostly healthy, I'm not going to say they're going to be 100% healthy, but if you're mostly healthy, your starters are playing, your backups aren't. Obviously, there's situations where rotational guys are in, but the Jets have much more top-end talent, like you're saying, and I feel like that's what you need. Yeah, depth is good when you suffer injuries. So health into the equation, I think the Jets are still a better team than the Patriots. Okay, yeah, a 7th-round pick who's getting thrust into a starting position because of an injury isn't value unless he's a good player. Like if he's a 7th-round player and he's ass, that's not value. You're starting based on circumstances. You're not starting because you progressed in training camp and you proved to the coaching staff that you're better than the starters. Like I don't get this, Alan. I'm confused here. I'm actually genuinely confused here. This I'll agree with. They're relying on a one-man rotation at edge right now in McDonald. He's not a one-down player. He's more than that. We saw run defense against the Packers. So I do think you need more bodies, but yeah, this is where I agree. They're relying on a little too not enough at the defensive edge position. I'll agree with, but I don't get this whole. I get it. He's an Iowa guy, and you're an Iowa fan, but getting thrust into a starting role at guard because of an injury is not value. All right. With that, I'm going to leave it there. We're at about an hour. I'm going to hop over, call into Jake's show, give my takes on the game in just a minute here. So I appreciate everybody tuning in. Please smash that like button. We got about 50, 60 of you in the room here, which I really appreciate. That's awesome. I don't like overlapping with Jake, so I'm glad that I was able to get Emory on for about 40, 45 minutes here in the first part of the show. Huge thanks to him. All of his information is going to be linked in the description below. I'm DTereman. Please hit the like button. We're on the road to 1,000 subs. We're getting there. We're closing in on 750 subscribers now. So really excited to ramp up as we get closer to the season. I'll be back at some point this week. I'll put out a schedule both on my X profile at DTereman, and then I'll make a post on YouTube. I'm going to be breaking down the game in similar fashion like I did last week. We'll go over some play charting stuff, some personnel stats, a couple more observations that I made from the game, but really appreciate everybody tuning in on this Sunday morning. Everybody go enjoy the rest of your weekend. I will talk to you later this week. Stay tuned for a schedule being posted. And until next time, let's go Jets.